Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the last class, we discussed about how to write a subprogram in different ways using with return type, without return type, with and without parameters. And we also have discussed different types of parameters that can be passed to your subprogram. Okay. So today we are going to discuss user-defined data types. And before that, I want to introduce another type. So basically, in C#, when you talk about a data type, right? We have seen some standard data types like, like numeric data, non-numeric data, like integer, character, float, string, right? But at the core level, when you look at the language core level, at the top level, higher level, every data type is considered as a user-defined data type. That's why you see like, int 16, int 32, int 64, everything is considered as class, right? Which comes with the console namespace. So at the top level, every data type is categorized into two categories: value type and reference type. Interviewer might ask this question. This is very, very important. At the top level, data types are categorized into two categories: value type and reference type. What is the difference between value type and reference type? So whatever is considered as value type, the storage is going to be on the stack. So when it comes to memory, it got divided into two categories: stack memory and heap memory. Stack and heap, irrespective of the technologies. Memory is common to all, right? So when it comes to memory, you will see two types of memory: stack and heap. What is the difference between stack and heap? The data will be stored physically on the stack, whereas only references of stack data members will be stored on the heap. Heap contains references to stack data members, but the data will be physically stored on the stack. So it comes to value type, the storage of value type is going to be on the stack. It means whatever is considered as value type will be stored directly on the stack. And whatever is considered as reference, the reference data will be stored under stack, but the reference of that stack will be stored under heap. It's like a pointer in your C. Right? What is a pointer? Pointer is a variable which contains reference of another variable. That another variable will be there under stack, and the reference of this physical data will be stored under heap. So, and which comes under stack, which comes under heap. So except string and object, only string and object comes under heap memory. Only string and object comes under heap memory. Except string and object, remaining all other data types comes under stack. Any questions, guys?
No.
Okay. Right. Next, let's discuss about user-defined data types. Okay. Now we have seen system-defined data types like int, character, string, float. Those are all system-defined data types. Those are implemented by your C# system. So like your int, character, float, you could also define your own data types. If you are defining any data type, that is called user-defined data type. Okay. So why do we need a user-defined data type? Okay. Let's see some example. For example, in one of the scenario, I need to define 100 different variables, something like int a1, int a2, a3, a4. Like this, I need to define 100 different members, like a100. What happens whenever you define any variable? Immediately, it will go to memory. This is called our memory. Okay. Immediately, it will go to memory and creates a location for your variable. Okay. Something like this. Let's say a1. A2. A3. A99. A100. It may and may not be stored in the sequence order. Like A1 can be stored somewhere, A2 can be stored somewhere, and A3 can be stored somewhere. Okay, but whenever you define any variable, immediately it will go to your memory, creates a location, and some unique address will be assigned to this location. Every location will be assigned with some unique address, and the value of this variable will be stored into this location. Okay, here we have defined 100 different data members, and I'm going to write two methods, two subprograms. Let's say method 1. Okay, and method 2. Now, according to my method 1, my requirement, your method 1 is going to perform some calculation. In order to complete this calculation, I need to get the data of all 100 data members. Right? Let's say I'm going to add the value of all 100 data members. I'm going to do some operation and all these 100 data members. So we have different 100 different data members. Now all these 100 data members are going to be used by method 1 operation. So in order to complete the operation of method 1, what I have to do? I have to go to memory, extract the values of all 100 data members. And when you talk about these data members, these are all independent data members. These are being stored independently in the memory. It means A1 has its own independent location. It is stored somewhere. A2 is stored somewhere. A3 is stored somewhere. A939, A100 is stored somewhere. Here 100 different data members are stored in 100 different locations. Now, in order to complete my operation, I have to go to memory and extract the values of all 100 data members. Here, I cannot extract all 100 data members at a time. In the beginning, we have discussed an example. I put all the coins on the floor and locked my door, went out. If thief enters into your room, what has to be done? If he wants to steal your money, he has to collect all the coins one by one. He cannot collect all the coins at a time. Right? So here also the same thing. In order to complete the operation of your method 1, first you have to go to memory and search for A1. Then go to memory, search for A2, extract A2 value. Then go to memory, search for A3, extract A3 value. Then go to memory, search for A4, A5, A6, A9, A100. How many times I should go to memory to extract all 100 data members? Every time I'll be able to extract only one data member at a time. In order to extract the values of all the data members, you have to go to memory 100 different times. Let us assume that every time it is going to consume 1 millisecond. In order to extract all 100 data members, I should go to memory 100 different times. If every time it consumes 1 millisecond, in order to extract the values of all 100 data members, how much time is going to be consumed? 100 milliseconds. But when it comes to real-time applications, not only 100, you will be defining thousands of variables, millions of variables. If I do like this, if I can extract only one at a time, what happens? I need to spend a lot of time in just extracting the data members from memory. Then what about my process, operation? First I would extract data, then I will perform my operation. So it is going to consume a lot of time. And when it comes to memory, memory can have millions of locations. First, you have to go to memory, search for A1. Your A1 is one of them. Not only your A1, right? Here we have millions of locations and yours is one of them. In order to find out A1, if I go to memory, I can't see directly, right? In order to find out A1 or A2 or anything, because not only you don't have only A1 or A2 here. Apart from your 100 data members, there can be a number of locations. Not only your 100 data members, there can be others also. So in order to identify a single data member, it has to search all millions of locations. And every time it has to search all millions of locations. You are going to memory 100 different times. Every time it has to search all millions of locations. So what happens? Your search process itself is going to take a lot of time. It will definitely degrade performance of your application. It will definitely degrade performance of your application. That's why I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Next, the first problem is it is going to lot of time. It will degrade your search process. And second drawback is, let's say, like your first example, if thieves enters into your room and open the door, as I said, I have 10 lakh rupees with me, which contains set of coins, set of currency notes. I kept all those coins and currency notes on the floor, locked my door and went out. If thieves enters into your premises and open the lock, you can directly see what is there on the floor. Right? Here also same thing. If I store them directly in the memory, you can directly see your data. It means there is no security for your data. Second thing, if these are being stored in different locations, the complexity will also be increased. Defining 100 data members and storing them independently in 100 different locations would definitely increase the complexity. So if I store like this, if I search like this, what happens? It will consume a lot of time. So basically your speed is going to be degraded. And there is no security for your data. Security is very weak. It is there, but it's very weak. And we have a lot of complexity. So if you want to decrease the complexity, increase the security, increase the speed of your search process, then what has to be done? In the first example, see, in the first case, what we did, we put all the coins and currency notes on the floor, locked it, and went out. If thief enters into a room, once you open the lock, he can see, right? You can directly see your coins and currency notes. You will just collect it and go out, right? So if you want to increase the security, what has to be done? So do not keep them on the floor. Rather, take 2 bags, keep all coins in one bag, all currency notes in another bag, and lock it. Keep all coins in one bag, currency note in another bag, and lock it. So in the second scenario, so what I did, I kept all coins into one bag and locked it, all currency notes into another bag and locked it, and I locked my room and went out. If thieves enters into your premises and open your door lock, now it can see 2 bags, but it doesn't know what is there inside that bag. But in the previous case, we kept all our coins on the floor. Once he enters, he can directly see your money. But here, he cannot see your money because it is placed inside a bag. He can just see the bag, but it doesn't know what is there inside the bag. So some level of security is increased. Some level of security is increased. And if thieves wants to steal that, in the previous case, you need to collect all coins one by one. It has taken a lot of time to collect the coins and currency notes. But here, it's a matter of just, picking 2 bags, that's it. So complexity is reduced. Speed is also increased. Right? So here also we should do the same thing. If you want to increase the speed, decrease the complexity, increase the security, what has to be done? Like your coins and currency notes, all your data and members and member functions has to be grouped into a single unit, into a container, like your bag. What we did, we have grouped all kinds into one container that is called bag, and we have grouped all current names into another container. Right? Here also we should do the same thing. If you want to increase the security, decrease the complexity, so what has to be done? You have to group, you have to keep all your data members and member functions into a container. And your data and everything should be stored in the form of a container in your memory. I mean, do not store like this. Do not store like this. Rather, what I should do, just create a common location. Do not store like this. Instead of this, create a common location like your bag. Take a container, and keep your data members here. And keep your method here. And give some common name to this container. Let's say my container name is ABC. Now what I did, like your bag, like your previous example, we have placed all the coins into one bag and locked it. Your bag is your container. Here, if you want to decrease the complexity, if you want to increase the search process, do not define them independently, do not store them independently. Rather, take a container, keep all your data members and member functions into that container, and give some common name to your container, ABC. Now, what if it comes to memory, there won't be any A1, there won't be any A3, there won't be any A2, A99, A100. Now, what happens? Immediately it will go to memory and create a common location with this name ABC. 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 What it will do? It will go to memory, creates a common location with the name ABC, and within this common location, it will keep all your data members and member functions, A1, A2, A3, A100, and method 1. In the previous case, in order to complete my operation, I used to go to memory 100 different times. But here, you don't have to go to memory 100 different times. Go to memory only once and search for only this common location ABC. If this gets identified, you just need to pick this location. That's it. It has all your data members and member functions. Now you need to go to memory only once and search for only your common container. Search for only your common container. Right? So what happens? Earlier we used to go to memory 100 different times. Now you don't have to go to memory 100 different times. You just need to go to memory only once. So 99 iterations are reduced. 99% of the time is saved. And second thing is, explicitly, this is only one location, but internally it contains collection of locations. If someone enters into this, you can just see your container, but you cannot see what is there inside the container. So complexity is reduced, security is increased, and speed is also increased. So, but what is this container? What is this container? So as I said in the first class, whenever you want to group set of data members and member functions into a container or common unit, then we require a container. The container is called as user-defined data type. What is a user-defined data type? It is going to be a user-defined data type can be a structure or class or interface. A user-defined data type can be a structure or class or interface. Basically, whenever you want to group set of data members and member functions into a common unit to reduce the complexity, to increase the security, to increase the speed, to increase the reusability, your approach should be towards user-defined data types. So this can be implemented in 3 different ways. Those are going to be structure, class, and interface. Basically, whenever you want to group set of data members and member functions into a single unit, then your approach should be towards either structure or class or interface. This can be implemented in 3 different ways, but everyone has its own advantages and disadvantages. Structure has its own advantage and disadvantage. Class has its own advantage and disadvantage, and the interface is also having same. Any questions, guys, so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Now let's see how to group your data members and member functions using our first user-defined data type called structure. Structure. When you talk about a structure, structure is considered as value type. And this is one of the lightweight component compared to class and interface. Structure is a lightweight component compared to class and interface. Basically, whenever you need to send large amount of data from one system to another system, from one layer to other layer, mostly we'll be using structure. When you want to implement reusable components, and you want to implement some advanced components, then your approach should be towards class and interface. We will see all those. First, let's see how to group your data members and member functions using structure. Let's move towards the next one, that is structure. So when it comes to structure, as I said, we need to follow the standard syntax defined by the system. How do you define a structure? Access specifier defines scope of your structure, whether this should be accessible within your namespace or outside of the namespace. And you have to use a keyword called struct. To create structures, you have to use a keyword called struct. Next, name of the structure, it is a user-defined one. You can give any name, A, B, C, blah, blah. Beginning of the structure, end of the structure. And within this block, you can keep n number of data members. Data members means variables like int A, int B. A simple variable in structure or class is called as data member. A simple subprogram inside structure or class is called as member function. So here you can define n number of data members, n number of member functions, methods, subprograms. Okay, so let's write a simple example. Okay. Now, one second, guys. It's taking time to load. Okay. Visual Studio. Continue without code. Choose your application type as console application. Select new project and choose your application type. Console application and give the project name, user define types. Where do you want to store it? Just map and give it create. So this is the default structure of your console application. As I said, by default, your project name will be considered as your namespace name. Okay, so we already discussed this concept in the beginning, right? So as I said, whenever you want to group set of data members and member functions, then we require a user-defined data type. Then we require a container called user-defined data type that can be either class or structure. Whenever you want to group set of classes, set of structures into another big container, then we require a namespace. When you want to group set of namespaces into another big container, then we require a library. So basically, a library will have collection of namespace. And when you talk about a namespace, by default, every console application will be provided with one namespace. That namespace comes with a default class. That class comes with a default method. This is nothing but starting point of your application. Just to accommodate your starting point of your application, they provided one default class. But apart from this class, what is the nature of this container namespace? A namespace will have collection of classes, collection of structures, collection of interfaces. It means a namespace can have collection of user-defined data type. It is provided with only one user-defined data type, only one class. But apart from this, within the same namespace, you can have n number of structures, n number of classes, n number of interfaces, because it will act as a container for collection of user-defined data types, collection of structures, classes, and interfaces, right? Now, if I want to create my own user-defined data type like structure or class, where should I place it? Yes, here. Within the same namespace, you can write n number of structures, classes, and interfaces. Is it clear, guys? Guys, your answer should be very clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's define our structure. Okay. So in C#, if you do not specify any scope, any access specifier, by default, it will be considered as private. So when you look into the syntax of your structure, how to define it? Define the scope of your structure. And you have to use a keyword called struct. Let's say public struct and give some name. Let's say some student. Okay. Or you can give some bank. Let's say SBI bank. Right? Now, what can I keep inside this? As I said, inside this, it will act as a container for collection of data members and member functions. Here you can define n number of data members, n number of member functions based on your requirement. Now I'm going to define some variables like string, customer name, like int, SSN. Next, some int, account number. Right? Now, we have defined some data members, and you could also define some member functions. Now, I'm going to write two methods, one for reading this data, one for writing this data. Public void read customer details. Okay. Here I'm going to ask user to enter his name, SSN, and account number. Read the data and place it into respective variables. Console dot Right line. Please enter customer name. So customer name is a string. Do I need to convert it? No, no conversion is required. You can directly customer name is equal to console dot read line. Right? So ask user to enter this. Read that from console window, place it into customer name variable. Now, see, these are about data members. Now we are writing some methods to play with these data members, right? The first method is going to take care of reading data from end user and placing them into respective variables. The similar way, asks user to enter is SSN. Please enter SSN. SSN is a number, so it has to be converted. Convert dot to into 32 of console dot read line. Next, ask him to enter account number. Please enter account number and read that account number. Right? It's done. This is for reading. And if you want to write comments on top of your method, when it comes to real-time applications, if you are going to design any method, if you are going to write any subprogram, you should write the purpose of that subprogram, what it is going to do. Right? On top of this, you can write XML comments. Just press 3/1, 2, 3. And rest of the part will be populated automatically. These are called XML components. So whenever, like you expose your structure and class to third party, they can see the purpose of this method. If you write like this, it reads details of a customer. Something like this. Next, public or private, void display customer details. Right? Now, whatever is there, here we have read this and kept them into these variables. And whatever is there in the customer name, SSN account number, we have to display them. Console dot write line. Customer name. It is there in customer name variable plus SSN plus next account number, AC number, account number. Right? So my structure is ready. This is my structure. Okay. As I said, within the same namespace, you can write n number of classes, n number of structures. But every application will have its own starting point. That starting point is there in the program, class program, right? If I compile my program, what happens? Compiler will go to main. Whatever is there in main, it will take care of executing only those. Within the same namespace, we can write n number of structures, n number of classes. Your compiler doesn't know anything about it. For example, 1 second, let me push it back. Okay, now I'm going to run this. What happened? Nothing happened. because doesn't know anything about this, right? So this is my structure, right? It has set of data members and member function. If someone wants to access your structure from outside, if someone wants to access your structure from outside, so what has to be done? This has to be instantiated in the calling environment. It means, yesterday we were discussing about it. It means you should create object of your structure. What is the name of your structure? SBI Bank. If I say SBI Bank dot, I cannot access anything. See, you cannot see anything, right? Because here we are going to store some data within your container. What is the need of instantiating a class? When you instantiate your class or structure, what system will do? It will go to your structure and calculate the memory size to be allocated. You have defined only 3 data members, but in the real time, you will be defining thousands of data members. It will go to your structure and estimate the amount of memory to be allocated for saving your data. You have defined 3 data members. So when you create object, it will go to your structure and analyze the data types defined here, analyze the variables defined here, and based on that, it will decide how much amount of memory has to be allocated to perform your operations with your structure. That's why if you want to call any structure, any class from calling environment, this has to be instantiated explicitly in the calling environment. That's why you should create the object. What object creation will do? It will allocate, it will create, whenever I say create my object, it will create a common location in the memory with your structure name. And within that, it will calculate how much amount of space has to be allocated. So that much of space will be allocated for your structure or class. That is the purpose of creating an object. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, so now we know that in order to save my data, play with them using my operations, what has to be done? So this much, whatever the amount of memory is required for my structure, that has to be allocated from the calling environment. That's why in the calling environment, you should create object of your class or structure. So SBI Bank, how to create it? Structure name, what is that? SBI Bank. And object name, you can give any name. Let's say I'm giving it as OBJ SBI. You can give any name. Is equal to new structure name. What is the structure name? SBI. This is a syntax. Structure name, object name. Structure name is your structure name. Object name is user defined one. You can give any name, is equal to new structure. Now what happens? It will go to your structure and analyze your data types, data members, and allocates this much of space for your object. Now within that space, you can play with your data member, you can perform your operations like this, like this. Now it allocates, here it is ABC. But in your case, it is SBI Bank. It will go to memory, okay, and creates a common location and allocates that much amount of space. And within this space, you can play with your data members and you can perform your operations. Okay, so whatever is being done on your data members will be performed within this space. Okay, now once this object gets created, once the memory gets allocated, now you can start playing with your data members, member functions. Now you can start playing with your properties of the structure. Sometimes I call it as property. Don't get confused. Property means what? It can be a data member or member functions. These are called properties of a structure or class, right? So whenever you want to access any property of a structure, property means data member or member function. Whenever you want to access any property of a structure or class, what has to be done? First, it has to be instantiated. It means you should create object of that class or structure. Once this object is created, so this much amount of space will be allocated to perform your operations. Now you can start playing with your data members and member functions using this object. Now, OBJ BSI. This is my object name. If I say dot C, now I can see display customer details. I can see read customer details, but I cannot see my data members. I can see only read customer details. I can see only display card. I can see only methods, but I cannot see my data members. Why? Let's go back to your structure. So if you look into this, read customer details, write customer details. These two are defined as public properties. Public. What is the scope of this? Once we define anything as public, anyone can access your method from outside. But when it comes to your data members, you did not specify any scope, whether it is public, private, or protected. When you do not specify any scope, by default, it will be considered as private data member. So these are private data members. These are accessible within the structure. Within the structure, you can access it anywhere in any method. But once it comes outside of this, you cannot access it. That's why I cannot see these members. For example, if I make this one as private, can I see this? Let's see. OBJ SBI dot. See. Now I can't even see my methods also. Whatever is really required to be exposed. For example, I'm going to write 100 different methods. Out of 100, I don't want to expose all 100 methods to the calling environment. I want to expose only 2. So whatever is really required to expose only those methods to the public. Are you to me? So using access specifier, you'll be able to provide security for your data, security for your methods. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, if I make it public, now I can see this, right? Keep your data member private and expose it through your public methods. Now, if I make this as public, what happens? OBJ SB dot. See, now I can see only customer name and methods, display customer, read customer, right? So that depends upon your requirement. So as a developer, you have to decide which one has to be taken as private, which one has to be taken as public, and which one has to be taken as protected. Okay. Okay. Anyway, now these we have written 2 methods. Okay. I don't want to expose the original part. Okay. The actual code data will be stored in these variables. I don't want to allow anyone to touch this. Rather, I want to expose them through public methods. I want to fill this data using a public method, and I want to display this data using a public method. Okay. Now, if I call this method obj dot read customer details. Now, what happens? As I said, once you compile your application, it will directly go to main. Now, what main will do? It will instantiate your structure, allocate that much amount of space. Now it calls read customer details method. Now this method execution will take place. This will take care of filling the details in these data members. Now, if you want to display them, you have to call display customer details. And finally going to be console.read to see your output. Okay. Now, let's keep a breakpoint here. Now see my object. This is my object. See, my object has 3 data members: account number, customer name, and SSN. Right? Now I'm going to read the data. Please enter customer name, SSN, account number, 1122. See what happens. I'm sorry, account number is an integer, right? Please enter customer name. SSN 12345. Account number 112233. See. Now yet second method. Now see your object. 112233 has been stored into account number, has been stored customer name. Now this is going to take care of whatever is there in your data members, this will take care of displaying those values. See, customer name, SSN, and account number. Write this. Guys, this is very, very important. The concepts of your structure and class, because in the real time, we will be working with only structures and classes. Are you writing?
Yes, sir. Right.
Okay, good. Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to give you the recordings, right? Just after this class, just go through the recording and write all programs. Okay.
ఒకవేళ ఇక్కడ పబ్లిక్ స్ట్రక్ట్ ఎస్బీఐ బ్యాంక్ ఉంది కదా మెయిన్ మెథడ్ పైన సబ్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ అది ప్రైవేట్ చేస్తే అది ప్రైవేట్ చేసినా కూడా వర్క్ అవ్వవా దాంట్లో
The scope, if you want to access it from outside of your class. See,
ఓకే
this is our namespace. What is the scope of this? The private structure, private class will be accessible within your namespace.
ఓకే నేమ్ స్పేస్ లో
Okay, if you want to access it from third-party assembly, third-party namespace, you cannot access it. Right? If you are going to
Okay.
develop a reusable component, right? Sometimes you need to make it accessible to third-party also.
ఓకే
Whatever needs to be exposed to the third party, make it public. Whatever should not be exposed to the third party, make it private. That depends upon your requirement.
ఓకే
Okay, very good. Next. Here, when you talk about read customer details, display customer details, right? In order to execute this functionality, in order to execute this action, this has to be invoked explicitly. If I do not call it, what happens? Nothing will be executed. Nothing get executed, right? So, when you talk about a subprogram, in order to execute this action, this has to be called explicitly from the calling environment. If you do not call it, nothing will be executed. But I have a scenario like, whenever my application starts, I have some set of configuration values. Those values are to be initialized automatically. It means starting your application is nothing but instantiating your object. Application itself, the object of application itself will be considered as a structure or class. Starting your application means it will allocate, it has to allocate memory for your application, for running your application. So, when you talk about a method of structure, in order to execute that action, it has to be called explicitly. But here I have a requirement like, whenever my object is instantiated, during that instantiation, some action has to be performed automatically without my intention. Once that object gets created, immediately some action has to be performed. I don't want to call any method explicitly. So, if you want to take that level of implementation, when some action has to be performed during your object creation, then your approach should be towards another concept called as constructor. Constructor. This is the purpose of constructor. What is a constructor? Constructor is also a subprogram, but it is a special type of subprogram where you don't have to call it explicitly like your read customer details, display customer details. Constructor is also a subprogram. You can write any kind of action inside constructor, but it is a special type of subprogram. When it comes to normal subprograms, this has to be called explicitly from the calling environment to execute that action. But when it comes to constructor, it will be invoked automatically during your object creation. Whenever the object gets created, then it will be invoked automatically. You don't have to call it explicitly. But when it comes to structure, there are certain rules to be followed to define the constructor. What are those? When it comes to our normal subprogram, the name of subprogram can be anything. You can give any name. But when it comes to constructor, the name of the constructor should be same as your structure name. You cannot give different names. And okay, let me see. Okay, let's define that. How do I define it? Public. And as I said, the name of this should be same as my structure name, SBI Bank. Let's say. Okay, now console dot. Now I'm going to take some variable. Okay. Int config value. I'm just displaying this console dot. You can write any action. I'm just writing simple right lines. Object created. Config value is, and just displaying this. What is the name of this? Okay, you're not aware of the properties, right? We'll tell you the properties later after this concept. Okay. Okay. Now I want some action has to be done automatically during my object creation. Okay, we have another concept called properties. We'll tell you. Okay. Now, when you talk about read customer details, display customer details. Okay. So if you want to execute this has to be called explicitly from the calling environment. This has to be called explicit from the calling environment. But as per my requirement, what is my requirement here? So I don't want to execute anything. I don't want to call any method explicitly. Rather, whenever my object is created, some action has to be performed automatically by the system. Some action has to be performed automatically by the system. Okay. So if you want some action has to be done automatically during your object creation, that thing has to be taken as a constructor. Okay. Now let's see. Now I just created a constructor, but here this constructor expects some value to be supplied from the calling environment. This constructor expects some value to be supplied from the calling environment. Okay. Now, here we are not calling anything explicitly, but from where do I pass this value? From where do I pass this value? Okay. So this value has to be supplied during its object creation. See, whenever I type something, here it will show you. If this contains any constructors, it will show you the definition here. See, here it expects some value to be supplied from the calling environment. Now, I am going to supply number 2. Just keep a breakpoint here. Run this. What happened? The 2 got supplied into your constructor. Did we call anything explicitly? No. It got executed automatically. Object created, converting value is 2. And you could also supply these values from here. If you want, these values are to be supplied from the calling environment. So whenever my object gets created, I don't want to read these values. I want to supply these values directly from here. Yes, you can also do this here. Something like this. String customer name, int some SSN, int account number. Customer name is equal to underscore customer name. SSN is equal to underscore SSN. Next, AC number is equal to underscore account number is equal to AC number. Are you getting? In this case, I don't have to read this using a read details method. Right? So if something has to be supplied, during your object creation, yes, you can go ahead and do that. Are you getting? In this case, what happens? Whenever my object gets created, during object creation, you should supply these values from the calling environment. And those values will be initialized automatically and placed into respective data members. Okay, let's see that. Now, I'm not going to call this. I'm going to call only this. Now, what has to be done? If you want, you can supply. See, during your object creation, it will show you 2 forms. 2 forms. There is a constructor which takes 3 values. If you have a requirement of initializing these values during construct creation, you can do that. Otherwise, you could also ignore it. It will show you 2 forms. It can be called without passing any values. If you want to initialize it, you could also supply these values: customer name, SSN, account number. Are you with me? So I'll show you 2 forms here. Okay. Okay. There are two methods: read customer details, write customer details. If you want to read them explicitly, call this method. If these values are to be supplied during your object creation, and you have to supply them during your object creation, we will see two. First, I want to supply those values from here. Yes, you can. What is the first one? Account name, let's say, customer name, let's say Prasad. Next, SSN 1 2 3 4 5. Next, account number 1122. Okay. Now I'm going to pass these values from calling environment only. So during object creation, now you don't have to call or read customer details because we are supplying values during your object creation. Now Prasad is going to be copied into customer name. 1 2 3 4 5 is going to be copied into SSN. 1122 is going to be copied into account number. Now what it will do? It will be stored into your customer name variable. This will be stored into your SSN variable. This will be stored into your account number. So these values are getting initialized during your object creation. In this case, the values are being supplied from the calling environment. You don't have to call this read customer details again, right? Because these are being filled during its object creation. All you need to do is you just need to call this thing, display customer details. Just keep a breakpoint here. Right? Now, customer name, Prasad, SSN, account number. This is empty, this is empty, this is empty. Now we are going to fill it. Customer name, SSN, account number. Whatever is passed from your calling environment, see, customer name, SSN, and account number. It got displayed. Right? So this is called parameterized constructor. This is called parameterized constructor. Okay, a constructor can be written with parameters, without parameters. If your constructor is taking some parameters, this is called parameterized constructor. Are you with me? And in second case, I don't want to initialize these values during its object creation. If you want to, you can. You have the flexibility. Your constructor also takes 3 values. You could also provide them explicitly. In this case, I don't want to supply them during object creation. Rather, I want to call a separate method to read this. Are you with me? So in this case, what happens? Will it be invoked? No, because it will verify the signature, number of parameters and type of parameters. The signature of this thing should be matched with your constructor signature. Signature means number of parameters, type of parameters. If I do not pass anything, right? So this signature is not going to be matched. So this method will not be executed. If I pass something, if the signature is matched, then only it will be executed. Okay, let's see that. See, it did not come to constructor. Now it came to your read details method. That's why it is asking me to enter customer name. Test SSN 23451122. Right? Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. So basically, whenever you want to perform any action, it can be done in 2 ways. In the first way, that has to be called explicitly from the calling environment. In the second case, that could also be executed during your object creation. If some action has to be executed automatically, whenever the object gets initialized, that should be placed inside your constructor. Constructor is a special type of subprogram. You don't have to call it explicitly. It will be executed automatically during its object creation. Okay. So mostly we'll be using a constructor in case of some value short to be initialized during its object creation. When something has to be initialized, whenever your application is started, then that has to be taken as constructor. That something has to be placed inside the constructor. Okay. And when you talk about a structure, these are the advantages of structure. When you talk about a structure, structure is a lightweight component. That is the biggest advantage. But at the same time, we also have some disadvantages identified with the structure. What is that? When you talk about structure, structure supports only parameterized constructors. I mean, if I do not take any parameters, it will not be supported. See, it is throwing the error. What it is saying? Structure cannot contain explicit parameterless constructors. Parameterless constructors are not supported. That is one of the disadvantage. And second and biggest disadvantage is structure doesn't support inheritance mechanism. Your structure cannot be reused by another structure. So using structure, you cannot implement reusable components. In any OOP language, object-oriented programming language, inheritance is one of the key feature. What is the need of a OOP? Using OOP concepts, you will be able to implement reusable components. So your structure doesn't support inheritance mechanism. That is one of the biggest disadvantage identified with structure. So using structure, you cannot implement reusable components. Okay. The first disadvantage is doesn't support all types of structure constructors. It supports only parameterized constructors. If your constructor doesn't contain any parameter, then it cannot be supported. And second and biggest disadvantage is it doesn't support inheritance. That is one of the major drawback. So you cannot implement reusable components using structure. To overcome these drawbacks, so what C# has done, they have introduced another powerful user-defined data type called class. Your second user-defined data type. When it comes to class is one of the like advanced user-defined data type, which allows you to do anything, everything. It supports all types of constructors, parameterless, parameterized. It supports everything, and majorly it supports inheritance. Using class, you can implement reusable components, more powerful reusable components. That's why when it comes to real-time environment, in 99% of the cases, we will be using class. Whenever you need to transfer some data from one system to another system, structure is the right option. But when you want to implement some complex operations, then that has to be reused by some other component. When you want to implement some reusable components, and the right option is going to be class. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
So if you are good at structure, you can easily work with class because the syntax and everything will remain same. The only difference is going to be in place of struct, you have to use class. That's it. In place of struct, you have to use class. That's it. Everything is gone. Earlier, it was highlighted with error. Now it's gone. It means parameterless constructors are supported. Arithmetic. And in structure, if some variable is defined on top of your constructor, it is mandatory that it has to be initialized inside your constructor. That is what we did, right? We passed some variables and initialized them. But here it is not mandatory. It is not mandatory. It is optional. If you want, you can initialize them during your constructor creation. Otherwise, you can leave as is. Are you with me? And you can have n number of constructors. Constructor 1, next constructor 2. Here I want to take two parameters like string customer name. I want to take another constructor. String customer name. Here I want to initialize int SSN. And I can take one more constructor. Int AC number. Are you with me? Okay. You can have multiple forms of same constructor. You can have parameter less constructors, parameterized constructor. Within parameterized constructor, you can have n number of constructor with different signatures. Different signature means number of parameters, type of parameters are going to be changed. This is called signature. Are you with me? Here it contains only one parameter. It contains two parameters. It contains three parameters. Right? But when it comes to, okay, let's initialize it. Okay, let's control that right line. Hey, I am from parameter less constructor. Here I'm going to initialize it. Customer name is equal to customer name. Here it takes two parameters. Customer name is equal to customer name. Next, I'm going to get SSN. SSN is equal to underscore SSN. Next here, 3. Customer name is equal to underscore customer name. SSN is equal to underscore SSN. Next, account number is equal to underscore AC. Right? And apart from this, I can have my own set of member functions. I can write n number of subprograms. Everything will remain same. But when it comes to class, as I said, you have a lot of flexibilities. This is one of the, like high level component, which allows you to implement advanced reusable components. Now, when it comes to this, right? Now, if I want to access any property of my class, what should I do? I should create instance of my class, like a structure, SBI Bank, OBJ, SBI is equal to new SBI Bank of C. Now I can see all forms of your constructor. See, a constructor without parameter. Yet click here. 1 of 4 means what? Hey, it has 4 different constructors inside it. You can use any one of them. This is the first form of your constructor. Next, click here. Second, the signature will be displayed here. What has to be supplied if you want to use second form? Oh, I need to supply customer name. Click on third. What has to be supplied if you want to use third form? Oh, I need to supply customer name SSN. And what has to be supplied if you want to use fourth form? Are you with me? So now what happens? Here, if I do not supply anything, what happens? It will always try to match the signature. Which signature of constructor is going to be matched? So this is going to be matched. So this constructor execution will take place. If I supply only customer name, now what happens? Oh, here we are passing only one parameter, that is type is string. Now which signature is going to be matched? This one or this one? This one is going to be matched. So this constructor execution will take place. If I supply SSN 1, 2, 3, 4, now what happens? Oh, you're passing 2 parameters, one of type string, one of type integer. Now which signature is going to be matched? First, it will match this signature. No, it doesn't take any parameter. It is not matched. Next, it will compare this. It is not matched. It takes only one parameter. No, this is going to be matched. It will be executed. Now, if I supply 3 values, what happens? This will be executed. When you are providing more than one constructor with different signatures in the same class, this is called constructor overloading. Constructor overloading. Read me. When you are providing more than one constructor with different signatures, that is called constructor overloading. But only one constructor with execution will take place. Here you can provide in different types of constructors. But whenever your object gets created, only one of them will get executed. How the system will decide which one has to be executed? Based on number of parameters supplied from the calling environment. The constructor execution will be decided based on number of values supplied from the calling environment. If you supply only one value, this will be executed. If you do not supply anything, this will be. So the execution will be decided during compilation time. And the execution of a constructor will be decided based on number of parameters supplied from the calling environment. This is called constructor overloading. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. And apart from that, you can write n number of methods. Okay. This is something about your structure and class. Okay. Any questions? And next one is going to be interface. So interface is also one of the user-defined data type, but we will discuss this when we discuss object-oriented programming. This has been introduced to support your reusable component development. So the reusable components can be developed using only object-oriented programming. So that's why we will discuss this concept when we discuss object-oriented programming, because all components will be implemented using interface only. Okay, next. What's the time? 9:27. Okay, next. As I said, if I want to call this read customer details, display customer details, what has to be done? This object has to be created explicitly. This object has to be. Now I'm going to remove all the constructors. Otherwise, let's create one more class. Public class my math library. I'm going to create a class which is going to have set of mathematical operations. This will take care of performing set of mathematical operations. And I'm going to write some methods like public int find sum, int a, int b. So what it will do, it will just add these two numbers and return the sum, return a plus b. Now, same way, control that. Find diff a minus b. Find product a into b. And this is going to be division. So it is going to return quotient and remainder, right? So I want to take two parameters, output parameters, out int quotient, out int remainder. It's not going to return anything, rather it is going to fill output parameters. So it is void, right? Quotient is equal to a by b. Remainder is equal to a modulus b. So like this, you can write n number of functions. Now, if I want to call this function in the calling environment, so what has to be done? Object of the class has to be instantiated explicitly. I mean, I should create object of this, my math lib obj is equal to new my math. Now what should be done? Obj dot. Now I can see find div, find use, find product, find sum. If I call find sum, I need to pass 2 values 10, 20. So what it will do? It returns some value. So if you want to call any method of myMathLab, what has to be done? This object has to be created explicitly. If this method is going to be called from 20 different places, what has to be done? This object has to be created 20 different times. This object has to be created 20 different times. Once this object gets created, what happens? It will occupy some memory. If this is getting created many times, multiple times from multiple environments, what happens? Those many objects will be created and that much amount of space will be allocated. If this is going to be called frequently from different places, from the same space, why should I create the same object again and again? If I create the object, it will allocate some memory, it will occupy some memory. If this is getting created many times, a lot of memory wastage will be there. That's why, if you think that if some method is going to be called frequently from many places, don't create this object. Don't create your object those many times. Rather, try to access this method without creating any object. I mean, something like this. I don't want to create any object. Rather, I just want to call that method using its class name. Something like class name dot. Here I cannot see anything. That's why if you want to access any method of this class, it has to be created explicitly. The object of this class has to be created explicitly. Once the object gets created, it will occupy the memory. If you create 20 objects, that much amount of memory will be wasted. Are you getting me? So if that method is going to be called once or twice, then fine. If that is getting called frequently from multiple places, then you need to create those many objects. Please don't do that. A lot of memory wastage will be there. Rather, access that method directly without creating any object. But here, can I access it? No. But still you need to achieve it. How do I do it? So then your approach should be towards static. Static. What is the nature of a static? Whenever you want to access any data member or member function of a class without creating any object, then that has to be, that particular data member, a member function has to be defined as static. That has to be defined as static. Now, if I make it as static, what happens? Static. Now I can access this method without creating any object. I can access this method without, now see, let's see. If I press class name dot, so now I can see find sum. Right? Now I'm able to access this method without creating any object. But I cannot access others. Why? Others are not static methods. They are non-static methods. Whenever, so when it comes to a class can contain static methods as well as non-static methods. Whenever you want to call a non-static method, it has to be called explicitly. The object of this class has to be created. Without creating any object, you cannot access any non-static member. But when it comes to static, yes, it can be accessed directly without any object creation. Okay, if you want to make it accessible with just class name, make it static. Now I can call this. If I say dot, see, I can call find diff and find sum. Right? So that is the nature of a static method and static data member. Not only method. Let's say here I defined a public data member. Right? So public int some SSN. Right? Now, can I access this now? No. I can access only find diff and find sum. Right? So that's why if you want anything to be accessible outside of your environment, so that has to be defined as static. That has to be defined as static. Now I can see SSN. I'm able to access the data member without creating any object. So that is the use of static data members, static member function. See, if something is going to be called frequently, then don't create your object those many times. Rather, make that particular piece as static. It can be a data member, it can be a member function. So that you don't have to create the object every time. Rather, you can access it directly using the class name. That way, you'll be able to save a lot of memory. But when it comes to the reality, without allocating memory for your object, how do you access the properties? How do you store your data? Then how are we able to execute our operations using class name? So in case of static also, the object will be created, but you are not going to create it explicitly. In case of static, by default, the object will be created by the system, and the same object will be reused towards different requests. If you are going to create it explicitly, if that is going to be called from 10 different places, in 10 different places, you have to create it explicitly. 10 objects will be created. But in case of static, what it will do, whenever the first request comes from the first user for that particular class, by default, the object will be created by the system. It will be maintained within cache, and that will be reused, the same object reused for different requests coming from different places. But at the ground level, when it comes to reality, the object is required. If it is in case of non-static, the object has to be created those many times. What it will do, whenever you create object, yes, it will create the object, allocate the memory. Once that operation gets finished, it will be destroyed. Whenever second request comes, again one more object will be created. Once that operation gets finished, again it will be destroyed. If 100 request comes, 100 objects will be created, destroyed. But in case of static, the object will be reused. Object will be created only once, and it will be reused towards different sub requests, subsequent requests. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So why do we need static? And we should not misuse it.
Okay.
Okay. Whenever it is really required, because it will be maintained within cache for a long time. Keeping too many things in a cache would also degrade performance, right? If it is really required, then only define it as static. Otherwise, do not define it as static. If that is going to be called frequently from many places, many times, then go with static. It is highly recommended. Interviewer will ask this question. What is the difference between a normal method and a static method? When should I go for a static method? You need to know the use of these two methods. Okay. Fine. Next and last concept of class is property. For example, when you talk about SSN, SSN is a private data member. We are not supposed to expose SSN to third party. One user, SSN should not be exposed to another user. Okay. This is a private data member. Let's say I'm removing static means. Static. I'm going to create object of my class. My Mathly. Obj is equal to new my Mathly. If I say obj dot, I can see only public methods, but I cannot see any private data member. If someone wants to access that data, fill something into that, they cannot do this from calling environment, right? Because they cannot see this. They don't even know what is there inside your class. Whatever they can see here is, they feel like, oh, we have only these available. We have only these functions are available in this class. But they don't know about private data members. Here you can have a number of private things inside your class. End user, whoever is calling your class, they cannot see private data member. They don't even know what is there inside your class. Ready me? But still, he should be allowed to fill something into my private data member. I don't want to expose that private data member directly to the end user. Okay, nobody should be allowed to touch my private data member. Are you getting me? But still, I want to allow him to touch my data member through some medium, some mediator. Simple example. Let's say now Telangana government wants to display the Kohinoor diamond in one of the exhibition. Kohinoor diamond. Kohinoor diamond is a valuable private property, right? It's a costly property, right? It's more valuable private property. If I keep the diamond on the table in the exhibition, what happens? Anyone can steal it because you're not providing any security, right? You're just keeping it in the public space. Anyone can, like take it and keep it in their pocket. Anyone can steal it. But here, what is our motto here? We should make it visible to the people, public. At the same time, should provide the security for that. It means they should see it, but they should not touch it. Then what we will do? In order to display that, what we will do? We will keep it inside a container, glass container. We'll keep that behind the glass and we will expose it through the glass. Are you with me? They can see what is there inside the glass, but they cannot touch it. They can see what is there inside the glass. Are you with me? So we are exposing the diamond through a glass. What is the mediator here? Glass. They can see it, they can feel it, but they cannot touch it. Are you with me? Because it is a private property. Whenever you want to expose a private property to the public, you should not make it accessible directly. They can touch it directly, they can steal it. It has to be exposed using some medium. What is our medium here? Glass. You should also do same thing here. Whenever you want to expose your private data, do not expose it directly. Rather, use some medium like your glass, the way how you are displaying your diamond, Kohinoor diamond. Use a similar process. Make it accessible to the calling environment through some medium. In that case, they don't even know where is it. They cannot hack your data. It becomes much more difficult for them to hack. Okay. So whenever you want to expose a private data member to the calling environment, then you have to use a medium called public property. Public property. It's like a glass between public and your diamond. Here we're exposing the diamond through a glass. Here your glass is nothing but a public property. So how do I define it? Just press prop and press that type prop and press your tab 2 times. It will be generated automatically. Type pro and press your tab, keyboard tab 2 times. This is called public property. Public access specifier should be public. Whenever you want to expose private data members, you would use public property. Are you getting me? So specify the type. Specify the type. And specify the name. My SSN. Here you can get and set. Okay, from get, you can return it. From set, you can set the value. 1 second, guys. But what Okay, sorry. Okay, so now every property comes with get and set. Get and set. Get means if they want to access what is there in your SSN, if they want to access it, they have to call get property. If they want to set something, they can set it through your media. Okay, now let's see both get and set. Okay, so under get, you just need to return if they want to get what is there in your SSN. So you just need to return that value. Return SSN. And if they want to set from the calling environment, just set it. So SSN is equal to, we have a system defined property called value. Okay, so using this public property, they can get whatever is there in your SSN using get property, and they can also set some value into your SSN. Now let's see, how do we fill value into SSN? How do we get value from SSN using public property? Go to obj dot. See, now I can see my SSN. What is my SSN? It is a wrapper of SSN. We're exposing actual private data member through this public property. Now, if I say is equal to 123, what happens? Set property will be executed. If I set something, this will be stored by default into this value property of C#, and we are going to send it to SSN. Now what happens? 123 will be stored into your SSN. And if I say something like console.writeLine SSN is, if I call that property obj.mySSN, what happens? It will invoke the get property. It means we are trying to access the value of SSN. In this case, the get property execution will take place. It returns the value of SSN. If I assign something, set property will be executed. If I access it, get property will be executed. If I assign something, set property will be executed. In the similarly, you can set everything, string, customer name. Same, write one more property. Prop, press tab 2 times. What is the type of customer name? String. Right? Get customer name. You can give any name. Write get and set properties. Get. It should return your variable customer name. Next. Set. Set it. Customer name is equal to value. Right? Like this, you can write n number of properties. N number of properties. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
ఇప్పుడు రీడ్ అండ్ రైట్ కి గెట్
You're saying something?
డిఫరెన్స్ యా రీడ్ అండ్ రైట్ కి గెట్ అండ్ సెట్ కి డిఫరెన్స్ ఏంటన్నా?
Read and write. Read line, write line, you're asking about?
యా రీడ్ రైట్ గెట్ సెట్.
Those are input and output statements. Are you getting me?
ఓకే.
That reads anything. Those are input and output statement. Here, you're trying to set something into your variable directly from the calling environment.
ఓకే.
What is the input statement? If you want to get something from the end user, then we use a read statement. For example, here I am hard coding the value. Okay. Instead of this, I want to get it from the user. Console.writeLine. For example, int SSN. Console.writeLine. Please enter your SSN. Right? Now I'm going to read it. SSN is equal to convert dot 2 into 32 of console dot read line. Now what I will do, I will pass this. I'm going to pass the value entered by the user. Now what I am doing here,
Okay.
whenever you want to get
Read.
something from the end user, you need to read the value entered by the user, right? Here you are asking him to enter it. Now you reading it.
Okay.
Now what has to be done? You have to set this value to the private data member. That's why we are calling public property.
ఓకే. రీడ్ చేసిన దాన్ని మళ్ళీ
Right.
ఓకే. సెట్ చేయాలి. ఓకే.
See,
Yeah.
here, whether you will get it from the end user, you will get it from a file, whether you will get it from a cloud, it's a different thing. Right? If you want to
Okay.
get it from the end user, if you want to ask him to enter the user, you have to use this statement to read it from the console window. This can also come from a file. This can also come from a database. This can also come from a cloud. This can also come from a service. Are you getting me?
ఓకే.
But if you want to set this value to a private data member, can I call this SSN directly? No. Because it is a private data member. You don't even know the name of this variable. All you can see is only public property. Right? So we are
Okay.
filling value into private property through this medium, through public property. So whenever you want to expose private data member like your diamond, we have to use public properties.
ఓకే.
Okay. So when you talk about a class, so what can I do with class? So you can write your data members, you can write your properties, you can write your member functions. Whenever you want to group set up data members, member functions and properties, then we require a class. So this is one of the high level C# implementation, which allows you to do everything, anything, which lets you implement advanced components, advanced reusable components. So when it comes to real-time
Okay.
application, in 99% of the cases, you will be working with properties as well as methods and private data members. Any questions, guys?
నో. నో. అంతే.
Okay. So now we are aware of the concept of value type, reference type, and user-defined types like structure, classes, and static data member, static member functions, object creation, constructors, constructor overloading, public properties. Okay. So what is the difference between a structure and class? Structure is considered as a value type, whereas class is considered as reference type. Structure supports only parameterized constructors, whereas class supports everything. And the major drawback is structure doesn't support inheritance. So you cannot create reusable components using structure, whereas class supports everything. Right? That's why in only few cases we will be using structure. The advantage of structure is a lightweight component compared to class. It puts less burden on the system, but there are a lot of disadvantages. So in mostly when it comes to real-time applications, whenever you need to hold some data between different requests, whenever you need to send some data from one system to another system, we will be making use of structure. Otherwise, we will be using only class. In 90% of the cases, you will see class. In only few cases, you will see structure. Okay. Now guys, so whatever you have implemented in the previous sessions, like finding even and odd numbers, okay? See, for example, if you want to become a good developer, I'll tell you, like we have a class called using system dot math. System comes with a class called math dot. You can see all mathematical min, max, square root, pi, power, absolute values. You can see all this, right? Sine, cos, tan, right? Why don't you develop your own class with set of different mathematical functionalities? Right? Write your own class, keep all the functionalities for different mathematical operations. Here we have seen addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Write all different operations. Read me like some geometrical operations, trigonometrical operations, statistical operations. Read me. So this is called your component. Your class is called as a component, right? If you have written, if you have covered, or if you have automated the operations of all mathematical functionalities, yes, it will get very good weight. You could also sell your component to third party. Read me. So start automating the mathematical functionalities right from today. Write a program to take care of addition. Write a program to take care of finding. For example, if I provide 30 degrees, your function has to find the value of sine 30, cos 30, tan 30, cos 30. Read me. So if two sides of a triangle is given, find the third side. Write a program to find that. Read me. So there can be a number of scenarios. Just take the mathematics textbook of first class or second class and try to automate all those operations. You will become master in C#. Read me. See, if I ask you to write a multiplication table of 3, now you're writing it manually. Try to convert that into system. Create a subprogram, create a class, create a subprogram, and write the logic to find out those respective things. Are you following me, guys?
Yeah.
If you want to become a master, take the mathematics textbook of lower classes, like second class or third class. Try to automate those operations. Write a dedicated subprogram for each and every operation. For average, finding average, write one. For finding sum, write one. For finding difference, write one. Like that, there are some millions of operations, right? Start doing that right from today. You will become master in C#. Write a program to find prime numbers, perfect numbers, Fibonacci series, reverse numbers. Develop a class with all these set of functionalities. If you feel like this is going to be very useful, yes, go ahead and you could also sell it to third party. A class is nothing but a component. Here, Microsoft has implemented one component. What is that? Math component. What is math? Math is a class. If I press dot, I'm able to access all this. Means all these are static methods. Because I'm able to access them without creating any object. It has only limited number of functionalities. See here, it has only limited number of operations. If you can create your own class with lot of functionalities, more number of functionalities, yes, you can sell it to third party. Read me, like find the value of a plus b whole square, a plus b whole cube, square root. Read me. There are many functionalities are available in the market. Okay, so if you want to become a master, I have explained you the concept, like what is a class, how to use it, what is the method, what is the property, how to automate your operations, how to access it, how to expose it to the third party. And I gave you only few examples. Now you should start implementing real-time examples, like take the mathematics book, or at least Agarwal, R.S. Agarwal textbook. That is one of the very popular textbook for your arithmetic and reasoning. Try to automate it. Find the time, distance, and estimation. Okay, will you do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please start doing that right from today. End of the session, will become master. Start doing that. If you get stuck somewhere, I will help you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, guys, we'll meet tomorrow. I'll send you this recording. Okay. Bye.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
And you know your exercise, right? The assignment for today. take the textbook and start automating the operations. You'll be getting PDF in the Google also, R.S. Agarwal, Arithmetic and Reasoning book.
Okay, sir.
Okay, right.